everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our roundtable discussion, product development in the AI era. I'm Edwin Schmier. I'm COO and co-founder and product manager at Rotational Labs, and I'll be your moderator for today's roundtable discussion. So today we brought together a fantastic group of panelists, product leaders who are actively applying AI in their day-to-day and their product development strategies. And we brought them here to share their real-world experiences, lessons learned, insights, and giving you a good idea of understanding how AI is shaping products and teams and organizations right now. So in terms of what to expect, it's a discussion about applied AI. We want to explore what's working, what's hard, what you can apply to your day-to-day, and thinking longer term as well. And our expectation is that you'll leave with a grounded perspective in AI. We all know there's the AI hype cycle, so sort of cutting through the hype cycle, as well as some practical insights and knowledge that you can take back to apply to your roadmap, to your organization, and to your career. Items. And now for the main event. As I said, I'm not going to go into deep bios here with our panelists. You can read their bios on the event landing page. I also encourage you to connect with them on LinkedIn when you have a moment. And essentially what I'd like to do is go around the table and ask each of the panelists to just say hello and maybe a sentence or two about what they're working on at the moment. So let's start with Evelyn. Evelyn, please.
Thank you so much, Edwin, and good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Evelyn. I'm a senior product manager at a company called Insight Software. Right now, I'm trying to build our AI agent into our business intelligence product platform. Prior to my current company, I had quite a diverse experience from Uber, Coursera, a lot of consumer tech, and also dabble into specific verticals like fintech, Capital One, and defense tech. Very happy to share my take on or hot take on AI with you all.
Great, fantastic. Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jess Hall. I'm a Chief Fractional Product and Design Officer. So I'm working with a variety of clients in a couple different industries, DevOps, education, security, and helping them not only kind of shape up their roadmap, but also figure out how to start to play with AI and how to figure out which AI use cases are going to be the most effective for them.
Fantastic. Sebastian.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sebastian. I am the Vice President of Product at BlueVoyant. We're a cybersecurity company. Before that, my sort of product journey was mostly building stuff for government and defense. Fun fact about me, sometime shortly after the Earth cooled, I had both of Edwin's co-founders as instructors in the Georgetown Data Science program. I say that because I want to plug that program as a great way to engage with this world, and also so we can all agree that if I say anything totally off base, it's kind of their fault.
We appreciate that. Thank you, Sebastian. Always like honesty. And lastly, Max.
Hello, everyone. Max Gabriel, co-founder and CEO at Actionable Intelligence. We are a new startup. We help clients build data and intelligence solutions, primarily in the B2B space. That's where I spent the past decade running large transformation programs. Look, I tuned out of any kind of AI webinars recently because there were a lot of noise and hot air. And looking at the other panelists, I'm actually excited to listen and learn to this discussion.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what we want to do. We want to learn in this discussion. And as you can see, we have a diverse group of product leaders, diverse in terms of their functional experience, industry experience. So yeah, let's kick off the discussion. I have a few questions, and then after that, we can turn it over to the audience for their questions. So let's start with the big picture. We are getting close to 2025. So mid 2020s, and I want to go 5 years out. So 2030. I think that's a reasonable time period. It's not too far in that it's abstract or irrelevant, and I think it's close enough that it will almost certainly impact all of our careers. It'll impact our companies. It'll impact our organizations. So I'm curious from the panelist perspective. Imagine yourself in the year 2030. What does it look like? And when I say look like, that could be from your vantage point, from your perspective as in the industry, in terms of AI and AI applications specifically to products. So with that said, this is kind of what we call a standing in the future exercise, right? Standing in the future, 2030, looking back, a lot's happening now. Do you expect it to be like it is today, or do you expect differences? So any of the panelists want to take this one on to start off? Sebastian?
I think what we're using today is going to feel like it's an old phone.
Really?
Like what we're using today is probably going to be the worst it ever is. The worst it ever is. And given the rate of change, we could be looking at a very, very different set of things. Now, it's not going to, in 5 years, is it going to be everywhere and completely transform the organization? Probably not. You're going to see leaders and laggards, but I think we're going to look back at, wasn't ChatGPT cute the way we thought the first iPhone was kind of cute, and we couldn't believe how few things it actually had.
It's interesting. I'm going to try hard not to look at the political landscape and what the world will look like in 2030. Let's put that aside. But look, I agree with Jess. This is whatever we think is fast is not going to be fast enough over the next 5 years. I was reminded by William Gibson's quote, the famous quote about future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed.
Yeah.
I think 2030, we're going to see far more even distribution of these capabilities. I've been pondering about that question. There are three things I can certainly see the way through. One, if you spend the past 10 years around, there's an app for everything. That's the world we live in today.
Right.
I can certainly see the next 5 years, there's going to be an AI agent for everything. Whether that's good or bad, we can circle back into that later. And if I look at business model, subscription business model have been predominant in many companies, and it's been successful. Whether it's been valuable or equitable is questionable. I certainly see subscription business model evolving into a different format that is more usable and valuable for the users. I don't know what that looks like, but certainly where we are is not going to be the model we will end up. The third one, which is pretty obvious, the composition of product teams would look different. It's starting to look different. You're going to have combination of knowledge workers. Let's assume that's us. And then there's going to be a lot of knowledge agents working harmoniously together so that the agents do take away a lot of the grunt work and do that far more efficiently. And the humans can actually focus on higher order thinking, applying intelligence. Those are three things.
Cool. Evelyn, I saw you shaking your head.
Yeah, I want to pile on to what Max said. I think not only our AI practice will be more driven by agent, but the agent will also be more proactive. Right now, when you use ChatGPT or cloud, it's you ask a question, you expect an output. Maybe in the future, the agent can anticipate what you are going to ask next. Or based on all the information you feed into the agent in the past, it can say, oh, if you're looking for a vacation in New York, here are the restaurants, here are the hotels. Maybe you wanted to take a quick trip somewhere else. But I also wanted to add my hot take because I'm all about hot take. I think 5 years from now, people will not, I hope, we will not talk about AI anymore in a sense that it's normalized. People will not say, oh, I'm going to build AI into my product and think it's the best thing ever. It will be normalized. However, we will still have the same problem. And I'm sure we'll expand that into the data quality in a little bit because we generate a lot of data and then garbage in, garbage out, and then data is the food for AI. So that's my hot take.
Sebastian.
Look, I never pass up an opportunity to be a contrarian, so I want to talk about what I think is going to stay the same.
Okay.
And in my view, which is similar to Evelyn's, is that the fundamental tradecraft, the sort of blocking and tackling and discipline of product management, probably is going to get faster. We'll use different tools, but that discipline is going to become more important, right? The ability to keep your stakeholders in the problem space, the ability to articulate the use case, the ability to map the user journey, the ability to write a requirement. None of that is going away, but it's getting harder, especially now as we're sort of at the top of the hype cycle, I think, where business stakeholders have a way of starting in the solution space rather than just wandering over there, right? So you get people knocking on your door and saying, I want to do something with AI. And your job is to say, you probably don't. Like, let's get to the actual use case. Then they'll say something like, we have all this data and I want to do something with it. And okay, that's helpful, but still not great. And eventually you got to get them to say, I need to decrease operational costs by 20%. And then you go, okay, now we can talk. So that whole journey that we as product managers are on, I think it's very important to like go back to the basics and strengthen that over time. That's how we get through the next 5 years.
Very interesting.
Absolutely agree. I don't think that's contrarian at all. In all the projects I've worked on, the fundamentals of product management still really matter and still have to be done to a really high level. Coming most recently from the world of commercial real estate, two interesting things that are happening on the edges is data center growth. And had data centers explored. A lot of us are from the Northern Virginia area. You go out 66 or 28 or the Dulles Toll Road, and there's a lot of pushback in a sense of what's going on with these data centers and the power that fuels them. And so I think the challenge of being able to fuel all this and to be able to find the places where it goes and the infrastructure that supports all this data is going to create some interesting, and also the competition between AI and cryptocurrencies and blockchain applications. I think you're gonna see a lot of interesting applications around how do we do things in a less intensive way, in a more distributed way, because we don't quite have the power and the data center supply to meet demand.
I agree, Jess. Just a footnote, Edwin, if I can. Just combination of what Seb and Evelyn were saying. I've been thinking about what would we learn from the prior cycles, right? Because there was the original internet wave and mobile and social wave.
Right.
And there's a reason why we have 100 apps on our phone to get through our day. Is this going to be replaced with, dozens and dozens of agents who don't get along, who don't speak to each other? And do we have the same interoperability issues? Should the earlier versions of AI agents need to look crappy like how the original websites look? Or would we actually learn from that? And this is going to be, more usable, more valuable for the users. So that's your point about product management is, are we going to look at it truly from a product position? Or are we going to make it easier for our customer is the big question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a great segue. Let's bring it down to the organizational level. A lot of our audience had questions around AI product strategy. For you can define that how you like. And it would be interesting to hear your experiences in formulating a strategy for your organizations or for your products in terms of how you are employing AI for your specific use cases. So when I think of strategy, right, it's a plan. Right, it's a plan to get somewhere. So we're talking about 2030, and the classic strategy is buy versus build. Right, it's often framed as a mutually exclusive decision. I think that's never true. It's always buy and build. But yeah, I would love to hear a little bit about how your organizations or your product teams are approaching it, approaching the strategy. What's the plan you're putting in place that you think is most effective for either your organization or your industry that you're in currently at the moment? So, given the fact that right now, as we know, AI is it is very early stages.
Sure, I can kick us off. I don't think of an AI strategy as distinct from my product strategy.
Okay.
Right. So if you think of the strategy, the definition that I was taught is strategy is a combination of ends, ways, and means. And AI expands the set of available ways and means, but in combination with all the other ways and means, they still have to serve the same ends. So, really the question is that we ask ourselves is, how do we double down on our differentiators? How do we sort of accentuate our strengths in the cybersecurity world? Largely, that's the quality of our investigation and the quality of our response to various threats. And then ask the question, after we've identified those things, does AI help us do any of this? The answer is yes. It just so happens because of how much we can automate the more mundane parts of the investigation. But we're open to the answer being no, because we start with articulating those ends. And that makes us, I think, a little bit more flexible and not necessarily chasing the latest shiny object. So AI strategy is a subset of product strategy, and I don't consider it differently.
Good take. How about you, Jess? What have you
Yeah,
seen?
well, let me give you a couple of different lenses from a few different industries and then how I kind of laddered up to a strategy. So my most recent employer, CoStar.com, we used machine learning. And so if you think about a lot of the homes sites, they come from what feeds them is something called the MLS. And everybody who in that space gets access from MLS, and there's an MLS in every geographic area. And what the homes team was able to do is take that raw data and be able to break it apart and recombine it into the ways that were going to be most attractive to that geographic area. So if you're in one part of the country, it's going to be really important to have a certain kind of neighborhood and a certain kind of style of house or certain amenities that might be very different in a place like Chicago compared to San Jose. And so we were able to take that out and be able to recombine the information to make it accessible and really put forward the things we thought were going to be most meaningful for the neighborhoods that people were looking at. Another one was we had a product for people who are representing commercial tenants. And we combined subject matter expertise of what would make a good opportunity to renegotiate a link, and then found observations in buildings where, hey, we think you might be able to renegotiate because somebody's moving out, or there's some space available, or they have a new lender. And we were able to identify opportunities that someone might need to be able to put a new thing on the board. Another one that I've been looking at is there's a couple of interesting companies putting together AI sandboxes. And what they're able to do is create environments where they can take in some data and allow people to explore. And I think that's a really interesting application because a lot of people kind of just need to get their arms around it and figure out what it is and how it works so that they can begin to formulate a strategy. And if you look at Andrew Ng's playbook, he starts with the idea of pilots and just trying to get a sense of what things are. I think that's a really good place to play. But I also agree with Sebastian. AI strategy serves the overall business strategy. But when you're trying to validate an AI use case, I think you're looking for a couple of things. One is the good old classic. Is it useful? The next thing is, do we have baseline area measure of performance? So if we're going to make this investment, what are we doing it against? Like we have to have the conversion, the revenue, the cross-sell, the churn, and we need to have baselines. So we don't want to just go into something that there's no baseline established. We would need to do that first. The next thing is examples. So when my girls were really little, they had lots of books full of, here's a bunch of dogs, here's a bunch of farm animals, because it was easier for them to learn what things were by looking at examples rather than getting specific instruction. Right. And my last qualification for an AI use case is you can't do it any other way. Because if you can do it with robotic process automation or good old-fashioned traditional software engineering, you have no business doing it with AI, because AI will cost more, it'll be less reliable, and it's going to have a lot of high ongoing costs. So if you can kind of tick those boxes for your use case, I think you have something. Otherwise, if you can't tick any of them, it's just not a good candidate for an AI project.
No, that's great. Great insight. Evelyn, I know you're building agents, and so I'm curious what your opinion is relative to strategy and how you got to that particular product strategy.
Yeah, I love what Sebastian said about AI strategy being part of the product strategy, and I love how Jess talks about the cost. Their comments made me think about, oh, what could I have done better in my current AI product? I think what I wanted to add on to the AI strategy is, yes, even though it's a product strategy, I think in terms of figuring out what AI can do, how it can differentiate the current experience, it has to be in two ways. One, what can be automated, and that's what agents comes in,
Mhm.
because right now the chatbot is not smart enough to break down step by step and then do all the automation. You have to feed that information into the chatbot. And I think if a task can be automated and broken down into like a call agent, that kind of like workflow, that can certainly be done. However, what AI cannot replace is creativity. So like right now, if you have an interaction with chatbot and you ask it to generate, some people try to do that. I certainly tried that, generate an image, and it's just wrong. Or when I was at Coursera, we actually we were piloting a product trying to help educators generating quiz questions,
Mhm.
because every quarter, the educators wanted to generate those quizzes and then run it, and it's a very manual process. And then what we discover is there's a lot of hallucination. So
Hmm.
we had to introduce third party to have the human in the loop. So side by side, we see the data quality between human being versus chatbot. So that's really eye-opening for me. So I think differentiating what creative versus can be automated, that has to be baked into the AI strategy for sure. And for pricing, oh gosh, like to Jess's point, there's the build versus buy. A lot of people probably don't need to train or build their LLM. But even when building an AI product, like what I'm doing at Insight Software right now, we wanted to get the product into the customer's hands. But once they start playing with the product, then the next question I'm asking myself is, who's going to pay for those tokens? So they are not cheap. I'll just tell you that. So I think all of that, like packaging, pricing, differentiation, are all important factors when considering how to embed AI as part of the product strategy.
Fantastic. What about you, Max?
It's interesting, the build versus buy, this age-old conundrum. My strategy has been borrow, borrow, borrow as much as possible because both options are super expensive at the moment. You know,
Yeah.
if you're open AI, you're burning through $5 billion. The cost is not visible at all. Some of these model building is expensive.
Mhm.
Where we've chosen to buy things, the obsolescence cycle is too rapid right now, right? So you buy something, you get into it, it's outdated very quickly. So we are keeping an eye on it and borrowing learnings and borrowing best practices and trying to do it. In terms of AI strategy, I'll share with a very coincidental conversation that happened with a client. We were called in to help them with the AI strategy. During the conversation, we figured out one of the things they were dealing with was an SLA breach on one of their client contract.
Mhm.
And it was sort of, quite opportunistic. We sort of said, it's nothing to do with AI, in your business problem is really, adhering to the customer SLA. Why don't we take all your contracts, and we built a very lightweight agent, Evan, like what you're working on, and say, turn thousands and thousands of customer contracts into an intelligent database where they can ask simple questions and subscribe for alerts around SLA breaches and all that. It just solved a specific business problem. To Seb's point, AI was invisible, and it's just how they solved the problem. So they
Mhm.
didn't really need it. They didn't really need an AI strategy.
Yeah, that's again a fantastic insight. And then Max, I'd love to get your perspective on. I mean, we talk about AI and technology, GPUs, models, but fundamentally, it's about people. And I know you've led a lot of change management initiatives across a variety of different organizations. So curious what you're seeing out there in terms of impact either on culture, because strategy and culture are very strongly coupled with each other. Uh, Again, just seeing the impact that you're seeing on people within organizations, whether that's at the executive team, all the way down through the organization. It's fundamentally management, right?
Yeah, no, great question. It's not something often discussed, although people talk about culture point. I've seen executives and actually sectors fall into these two ends of spectrum. There is hyper reactive FOMO saying we just need to do something right away. Let's just jump into it. And then on the other extreme, so which actually is they're running a lot of pilots, actually not taking time to think through what they really want to prove out. On the other side, there is this passive indifference, saying, this is just another wave. I'm just going to wait on this out and let's see what happens. In fact, some of those leaders are going to a level of locking any AI tools in their network, saying, they're really taking a risk-on approach, saying we don't want any liability here. Let's lock things down. So clearly, the idea isn't to be either end of the spectrum. Is how do we get the leadership team to the right place in the middle, so that they can be a bit more managed and measured about their approach. I genuinely think data literacy plays a bigger role because of the consumerization of ChatGPT. Every colleague knows what to do with it and the things that they can do in their day-to-day lives. I don't think there's a specific AI literacy that's needed. Love to hear thoughts on others from other panelists.
I'll push back a little bit on that last piece because of something else that you said. So agree on data literacy. Some AI literacy is important because I think the strategy needs to be informed by the cost of a false positive and a false negative, right? So you need to be able to put a confusion matrix in front of a stakeholder and express it in dollar terms and say, hey, listen, with this model, are you willing to live with this? So I think that getting leaders and getting the entire organization to understand the ways in which AI could be, yes, beneficial and, improve margins or whatever, but also in the costs that you're taking and how either predictable or unpredictable they may be. That's a conversation we're not really used to having when we deploy deterministic models or automation or good old-fashioned software engineering. It's a little bit harder to quantify, and we need to start introducing people to these concepts.
So that's an excellent point in terms of the cost remains very invisible because of what's happening in ChatGPT and other tools. It all is made to seem very effortless and easy. So people think, well, if I can do that over there, why is this hard? Without really understanding the real cost involved in it. And look, I would speak at the industry where service providers are not helping, right? Actually providing the level of transparency needed about fully loaded costs that they need to inherit in order to do that. So I agree with you on that in terms of cost implications.
I'm gonna pile on, and I think this is like a full circle in terms of what we talked about product strategy. What I ran into nowadays when building AI product is when we demoed it to the customer, they love it. It's so cool, right? Like when you open up a chatbot and you ask the chatbot for product information, it gives you. But there are so many other companies and product doing the same thing. So then you ask the customer, if you like it so much, would you buy it? And then silence. So like that's the thing. I think what Sebastian was saying, like AI strategy has to be part of the product strategy. Mm-hmm. So what is the jobs to be done? Like what gets customer excited might not be something they are willing to purchase. Right. So, and like I see in the chat, like someone was asking like how to offset the ROI basically. So I think there's a lot to be done about like what is the willingness to pay for AI product? Because essentially an AI product Without a strategy, you are competing with all the other open, like big players, like
Right.
OpenAI, like Claude, like anyone can just put in their prompt and get what they are looking for in all of those pre-existing models.
Interesting. Jess?
Yeah, I was going to say so I love the question about business models and how are people thinking about it. And I think there's a lot of experimentation happening. There's definitely some work in particularly in light of our current economic situation where interest rates have been higher. And then generally there's been a sense about we need to be efficient. And it's not like the zero rate, let's go spend a lot of money. So I think you're seeing a couple of different strategies that organizations are using. One is they're kind of taking from one bucket to fill. So they're making maybe one or instead of 5 or 6 strategic bets, I'm seeing companies say, we're going to make 1 or 2 bets, and that's going to be related. What we invest in AI is going to be related to whatever our biggest bet is, and we're only going to make 1 or 2 bets, and the rest of that money, we're not going to go ask for it and ask for loans. We're going to fund that through internal operations. So the existing business lines that have been generating revenue are being expected to do more with less. So that additional money can go into wherever the big strategic bets are. And so they can continue to make progress without having to borrow money. The other thing is I think we're going to see a lot happen in the SaaS market in the next year, because a lot of organizations have been rolling out these AI features with the idea that it's going to increase the value of their products such that they can take an increase to their customers. So an example that's very big in my world, and I negotiate with them every year, is Figma. And so it's a big design tool. They rolled out a lot of big features. They had rolled out dev mode, which was like an additional $420 per developer that had that. So that increased my Figma bill a lot. And then they rolled out a bunch of AI features. And I'm pretty much expecting that we're going to have another negotiation because someone's going to have to pay the piper for that. And if you think about all of these people who are on in B2B on a 1-year contract, I think the rubber's going to meet the road here pretty quick, is to say, are people willing to foot the bill for these increased costs for these AI features? And I have a friend who was doing a startup, and she was doing it in the world of B2B sales. And they came up with something, it was awesome, but it was a $200,000 upfront investment.
Oh, wow.
And it was just more than people were willing to pay. And I also know of a startup, and Sebastian is more familiar with this than me, in like the security area, and awesome product, great use of technology. It was way cheaper, just pay the fine. And so I think we're going to see a lot of people who are making some bets here, and within the next 12 months, especially in the world of SaaS, we're going to see if people are willing to pay for that.
Fascinating. Yeah, I'm also curious. I see a lot of quote unquote AI native companies getting funded. So for example, yesterday I saw there's I think it was a DC based company called Fixify, and they are like an AI native IT support tool versus say you're, for lack of a better word, incumbents. So do these AI native companies have an advantage? Because they're essentially building from scratch. They don't have a lot of the quote unquote legacy, right, costs associated with them. I'm curious what all of you think in terms of that. Again, specific to your industry. I know, for example, Sebastian, we've looked at cybersecurity, and there's a lot of interesting companies coming up in that particular industry. So I would love to hear each of your thoughts about sort of the AI natives versus the potential either advantages or disadvantages that the incumbents have.
You picked on me, so I guess I'll start. I think the challenge with being an AI native company is you kind of risk entering a commodified market, which I think is what everyone was talking about, right? If all you've got's a model, then why is your model better than anybody else's? Right. So I think in this case, the advantage kind of goes to the incumbents, provided that they are able to adapt and transform quickly enough. Part of our job as product managers, right? But You know, if you're accustomed to delivering a service through some means other than AI, you learn an awful lot about what it means to deliver that service or that product. You generate a lot of data in the process of doing so. And, one of the things that we're fortunate to have in the cybersecurity field is all the data you can shake a stick at. But because we've had security professionals analyzing this over the course of years, there's a real powerful body of training data for us to start from.
Right.
And that, how we train the model to basically adopt our SOPs, to adopt what our experts have been doing, that's the differentiator. So would I rather be in my position of sort of transforming a managed service to use more AI, or would I rather start fresh? I'm staying where I am.
Great perspective. Cool. And then I guess to kind of bring it down to the career level before we open up the audience questions. So, imagine you're all mentoring product leaders out there. What advice would you give them, given where we are now, given everything we've talked about, in terms of how should they think about their career? Should they become data scientists? I'm curious what your takes are on career advancement for product leaders as they think about AI and the impact on their product. So I don't know, Evelyn, we'll start with you.
Oof. Well, I'll just be honest with you all. Maybe 5, 10 years ago, I don't even predict that I will have AI as part of my responsibility right now. And I think going back to the fundamental of what do we mean when we say AI, LLM, machine learning, natural language processing? I think in terms of job stacking, I think of job skills as a stacking.
Mhm.
A lot of people might approach, oh, I want to learn about AI, so let me get a degree or certification. So that's one way to go. But what I usually recommend, or at least I tried, is if I'm interested in something, I start playing with it. So I would try playing with different LLM. Like on my way to San Francisco, I was looking someone using cloud. So I talked to the person, like, what do you see the difference between using ChatGPT versus Perplexity versus cloud? And we started an interesting conversation. And I think if you are someone with more aspiration of building something, there are definitely cohort-based learning out there. Like you can get your hands dirty. You can also customize your own like agent. Like there's so many ways to get your hands on creating that agent or a chat flow. There are so many ways. So it really depends on the personal preferences. But I learn by I do something. So that's what I usually go about, upskilling myself.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Jess? So you come from a design background, and I think that interface is very interesting. I mean, we all think about chatbots, but that's not the end, and that's not the all. So I'm curious how you're thinking in terms of career advice and thinking about design with respect to AI.
Yeah, I have two areas to it. One is kind of really thinking about what is needed in this moment that's going to continue to change and how to develop that skill set to kind of piggyback off what Evelyn was saying. And when I talk to ML teams and AI teams, what they're really asking for is very well defined, very smart, very validated use case. And they want to understand the problem to be solved in a rich and detailed way.
Okay.
And that tells me there's an opportunity for design and UX research to be able to create those use cases and to truly understand what's going to differentiate. And then the second place where I think it really comes into play is now that you've generated some sort of output, you got to do something with it. So what is the thing? And so figuring out where in a workflow we want to intersect, how do we want to surface things, how do we want to provide information about where that recommendation came from and how much faith to put into it and what to do with it next and how to connect all the dots. This to me is the realm of people who are in the product and design area. And this is where we have an opportunity by leveraging our existing skill sets to really add value. But what it means is that we're going to have to let go of some of the traditional things that have defined us. So like your ability to make things in Figma is not going to be as important as your ability to conceive and explain to these AI systems what you're trying to achieve and know where and how. And so I think the role will continue to exist, but the tools of the craft is going to change. And I think the way you learn the craft is going to change a whole heck of a lot, because now an AI can do what a lot of junior designers would do. At the same time, I'm also sitting, now this could be me being biased, but I'm seeing a lot of this for my mid to senior career folks out here. It feels like the market is changing in pretty major ways, and I'm seeing a lot more and more people kind of go out on their own. And I think that there's kind of a sense of you might be fractional, or you might be a consultant, or you might be moving around. So you become a much more in this world of change, you need to become a much more independent operator, and the product is you. And your skill set and your network and your ability to communicate that value and your ability to get involved in conversations. And so I would say, not only do you want to build your skills and play around with things like Evelyn's saying, is you really need to be thinking strategically about your career. Right. And how do I build the network, build the skill set, build the exposure, build the brand. So as these business models change, as these roles change, as you might not be a full-time employee, but you might be a consultant, or you might be fractional, and you want to get pulled into deals, like you have something important to offer. And that kind of flexible mindset is going to be a really powerful thing to have.
Good insight. What about you, Max? What are you saying?
I really like just point about validated use case. A good product manager today does so many things. They're expected to do multiple things. Those are all the distraction that takes them away from fine-tuning, harnessing the core value proposition use case. And with all these advent of new AI tools, they can, sort of not worry about it and really get into the deeper use case. More than the skill set, let me give you as a leader managing product teams, my view is the ask for the product colleagues out there is, if I were to rewrite the manifesto, we need to move on from this minimum viable product concept. I don't think that's going to continue to fly anymore, to how do we maximize productivity for our customers? And what are the best ways to do that?
Interesting. Ashton, any thoughts on career advice?
My thought is that I can't improve on what Jess, Max, and Evelyn have said.
Very cool. Okay.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah,
I really resonate with what Jess said about it has to be about the specific use case, because when you think about the change of job titles, if someone just chase after what's hot out there, we heard from prompt engineering to now there's talk about conversational AI. I feel every couple of months, there's a new shiny thing about the job title, about what people are working on, and they are all somewhat related to AI. So if it's not clear in either the use case or what you are trying to pursue in your career, then it's just about the fade. So I'm hoping like 5 years from now, we normalize, we have a nomenclature of what truly an AI product manager or practitioner means, and then all the skills will evolve around it.
That's a great question. Great point, I should say. So we do have a few audience questions that I want to get to. The first one I want to ask is, what AI-driven capabilities do you see as differentiators when successfully deployed in products right now? Which of those will still be relevant in 5 years? So when you think about AI capabilities, what AI is fundamentally good at, what do you see as differentiators when they're successfully deployed? So we talked about things like agents, how does that work? What capability is important?
Well, I'll take a shot. I think too early to tell what is actually working well. I think at a macro level, we are at an early stage, but I certainly see emergence of domain-specific, industry-specific models.
Okay.
That's that's where there's going to be a lot of activities that's going to come in. And that's Seb's point about, if you're in cybersecurity, just zoom into that and make models in cybersecurity or financial services in the subsectors. I think there's going to be thousands of models that's coming out. So any skills around not actually building the model, helping build the model, reviewing the model, there's a lot in there.
Yeah, that's great. Another question around what are some red flags you've learned to watch out for when buying an AI product or working with an AI services company? Have any of you made mistakes?
I made many mistakes. Well, I don't trust people who don't hedge.
Okay.
Straight up. Anybody who said, "Oh yeah, easy, no problem, we got this." No, it's just like, no, I don't believe you. Either you don't understand how hard it is, you're lying, or you're making stuff. Like when people hedge, especially engineers, I trust them more.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this looks reasonable. Here's the things that might happen. Here's the things that we might encounter. So if anyone's saying this is easy, no problem, we got this, like if they're not qualifying at all, like don't believe them.
Okay.
And also when they say to you, because I saw IBM's framework, and they're like, we have to organize their whole framework is built around organizing and managing all their data, right? That's a multi-million-dollar contract for IBM that will do not a damn thing for any IBM customer. So I am not data first. In general, I'm like, let's focus on the use case. And then what do we need the data to do? Because I know of a company that spent like 2 years collecting data for a feature of a product that they were going to build. And then after the 2 years, when they started to get that into a test environment, they realized the schema didn't make sense.
Wow.
Like these are the kinds of things where I think, again, other area for product to lead is the data strategy is super, super. What are we collecting? What are we storing? How are we storing it? And really being thoughtful about how we're going to take that and use it. This is a place where I think product managers has kind of said, oh, what can I do with what I got? Well, that conversation needs to shift and to say, what do I want to be able to serve my customer with? And how does that help me? And what do I need to collect in order to enable those things? How do I make them smarter, faster, more effective, less error prone? And what's going to make that happen? A good use case that I kind of loved was Microsoft has an AI for Good Lab, and I was just hearing someone talk about it. When they have these tools for assessing natural disasters, and they can pretty quickly with images figure out how many people are affected and where, and then they can help nonprofit and government organizations deploy to the most effective areas.
Wow.
And that's a fantastic use case. And now people want to use it for like insurance and some other things, but that's a fantastic use case. It's making people smarter, more effective, more efficient with the things we do. And so I think as product leaders, we need to be starting to think a little bit further out than 1 or 2 sprints, because otherwise that ship of data collection, management, and curation does not turn quickly.
I have a simple deal breaker. If everybody in your organization, down to the junior account executive I'm talking to, can't articulate an absolutely bulletproof answer to data governance and AI governance, I'm hanging up the phone.
Yeah. Which is interesting, Seb, where just to your point, not taking a data first approach, I come at it from the other end, data last is also a disaster. A bunch of B2B companies were rolling out AI-based matchmaking solutions and then realized, well, that didn't really help with matchmaking because it was only as good as your data governance. The underlying data was no good. Nobody paid attention to that. So layering in a solution will not help. My red flag would be, it reminds me in early 2000, there were a lot of people walking around saying we are internet expert consultants. If people walk around saying I'm AI expert and I'm going to help you fix your AI problem, that's a red flag.
Interesting. So you're all telling me that AI is not magic? Uh, um, well, we are coming up on time. So one final question and then just your final thoughts. So what AI features excite you the most? And please don't say chatbots. Or is it too early?
No, I think the drug applications.
Drug applications.
So there's been some interesting work with like analyzing data to be able to come up with drug discovery.
Oh, very cool.
And to me, the UN one with the disaster area maps, that seems super interesting.
Mhm.
I think that we can use AI to discover more drugs and therapeutics and enable studies to run faster.
Yep.
Is really interesting. They haven't rolled it out, but Fico is going to make it easier for you to find that stupid mock-up if you can just describe it, which would save me hours in a day. So I think I think people kind of so many people in AI have gotten pissy because it's the chat GPT vacation of everything, but the box is going to go away.
Yeah.
Eventually. And what really it is it's about surfacing the right things to the right people at the right time and figuring out what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And then, shaping it from there. So I think there's a lot more to do. I'm looking at some applications in DevOps, and I think there's a lot of opportunities to be able to manage costs and speed deployments and making it easier to enable people in their environments without creating too many security and cost implications. So I think there's a lot of possibility.
Fantastic. Sebastian, do you have an opinion on the feature that excites you the most?
Man, I'm embarrassed about this. Someday, soon too, AI is going to be able to make slides as well as I can, and I may be out of a job, and that's okay. Life will become a lot easier.
I would love that. How about you, Evelyn?
I'm most excited about the feature I'm building. So right now, the AI product I'm building can analyze the chart data, but my vision is in the near future, it will solve all the board meetings and QBRs. Not only it will do the slides Sebastian is talking about, it will clean up the data.
Mm-hmm.
There will be so much time saved every quarter.
I've heard that many times. Someone should take note and build a product. What about you, Max?
No, the agents, I'm quite excited about it.
Okay.
One of the recent use cases where we summarized the dashboard result and say, here are the 3 things you need to think about. And we mark them red, amber, green. Instead of somebody spending 30 minutes walking through the chart and let people ask rudimentary question, it just, helped everybody that they got to the headline very quickly.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so we are at time. I would like to just do very quick final thoughts. Anything you'd like our audience to walk away with before we sign off? And I guess Jess, we'll start with you and go down the roundtable.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think the themes are clear. Get in there and play.
Yep.
Lead from strategy and what's going to help your organization win. And I think there's also, there's the other skill that you probably still need that's really important that maybe if you don't have, you should work on is storytelling and influence. Which is how do I really, so much of this is going to be a change management. We didn't really talk about that today, but
Right.
For so many people, AI is identity threat, which is why my mom got super pissed at me when we tried to go to New York City and she insisted on going one way, even though Google said to go another way and they had to sit on Google. So I think that, there is still a need for all those people management, storytelling, blocking and tackling needs that we need to not forget about because we over-index on the technology part too much.
100% agree. What about you, Max? Final takeaway?
I would just say, sorry, go on.
Oh, I said final takeaway?
I would just say I would advocate maximize productivity, which means think about productivity very carefully and intentionally. Doing things faster and cheaper isn't necessarily productive. a lot of technologies have failed on that promise. So take the opportunity to truly help drive productivity for your clients.
Fantastic. Sebastian?
Great time to be a product manager, right? Focus on the fundamentals, focus on the business outcome, the client outcome. You're going to have a great time making the most out of AI.
Evelyn, you're laughing.
I disagree with that. There are so many product managers out there, and then the AI is supposed to make us, to Max's point, more productive. And then why do we need so many product managers? But I guess my takeaway, which is a little bit different, is back to the first principle: data quality and security. Security, we are not even talking about it right now. When you think about like the Hugging Face bridge, when you think about all those like crazy incidents people can do around those AIs. So I think the first principle about data, about security, about customer first is really what I want the audience to walk away with.
Well, fantastic. Yes, we only had an hour. I wish we had more time to talk about security. It's something that's very important to us. But thank you all for joining us for today. Really appreciate all your insights and your stories. A lot of great takeaways. And thank you to the audience for joining us today. And we'll be in touch. And everyone have a great day and have a great weekend. Take care.
Bye.
Pleasure. Thank you.